So motorcycles specifically, the Harley Davidson, is deeply rooted within the American culture, but it's also a culture of itself, and it's created its own culture of patriotism, brotherhood, and service. Hopefully by the end of this speech, you will understand the impact that motorcycles have made on this country and the impact that it is still making. Although I'm not a motorcyclist, I do enjoy riding on the back of a Harley every now and then, and I enjoy seeing bikes riding on the road. Today we will discuss the history of the motorcycle, mainly focusing on the Harley Davidson brand. Then we will look at the events and rallies that group these people together that allow them to create their brotherhood and their bond. Next, we'll look at the causes and the contributions that they make on society, and finally we'll experience the motorcycle, the experience that the motorcycle gives to the rider. The history of the motorcycle is enriched in the history of the United States. It's easier to talk about just one brand of motorcycle, so we'll focus on Harley, and what's more American than the Harley Davidson. It was started in 1903 by William Harley and the Davidson brothers, William, Arthur, and Walter. The first one that they built was simply just a bicycle that they put a motor in. And by the first year, they were able to sell 3. And that one motorcycle, they had to pedal the pedals in order for the motor to start. The business continued to succeed within the following years. By 1907, they sold 61 bikes. Just a couple years after that, they created that iconic Harley Davidson sound that is that deep rumble, and you can just feel it in your soul. By 1914, they were concerned that they would lose their business and workers because of the draft and the impact that World War I was making on the country. But Harley Davidson decided to build a partnership with the U.S. military, and they sold over 20,000 motorcycles to use during infantry. The soldiers were able to chop up the bike and be able to make the bike faster, and that's how the word the chopper came to be. This also contributed to the success of the Harley Davidson, because when the soldiers would come home from the war, they trusted in this brand. So whenever they wanted a bike for themselves, they bought that brand for them. And lastly, this is probably the reason why Harley Davidson was able to survive past the Great Depression, because not only did they have this connection with the U.S. military, but they also had a connection with the U.S. Postal Service, and they also had the connection with Europe and Canada imports. By 1953, Harley Davidson was the only American manufactured motorcycle to still be operating in the U.S. Harley Davidson became famous throughout the country because they were able to win numerous races throughout the country. Owners would build new bikes and then show them in these races, and whichever bike was able to win at the end of the race, that was the most sought after bike at that time. Harley Davidson dominated the racing scene so much that they were considered the wrecking crew. In 1920, their bikes broke 30 speed records in Daytona. And there's a scene in the 3rd episode of Harley and the Davidsons. They had just finished building the Knucklehead, and they wanted to showcase this in a race. And so they took it out, and one of the sons of the founders actually raced it, and he won, of course. And the next scene showed where they were trying to calculate the speed of that bike, and it got up to 106 miles per hour. And Bill Harley said, fastest darn motorcycle in the world. The Knucklehead was the last motorcycle that the founders actually built together, but it's so popular that Harley Davidson still models bikes after the Knucklehead. Just like the history of the motorcycle is encompassed by races, there's rallies and events that have races, and this enforces the brotherhood of the motorcycle. 2 very big rallies I want to mention is Sturgis and Daytona Bike Week. Sturgis is one of the largest and most well-known bike weeks in the country, if not the world. It takes place in Sturgis, South Dakota, usually the first week of August, and this year will mark the 79th annual of the rally. It's not just for Harley Davidson riders, but it's for all bikes. And it's a rally that involves music, food, and celebrities. But the biggest pull, other than the camaraderie of the bikers, is that they're able to ride down the beautiful Black Hills of South Dakota. Bike Week isn't just about joyriding. It can also be about who has the better bike. Daytona Week is usually the first bike week that riders can enjoy after the cold winter months. And it started over 80 years ago in 1937. And unlike Sturgis with the scenic views, Daytona offers more to the tourists. They have the Kennedy Science Center and they have Disney. But just like Daytona is well known for their car races, so is Bike Week. They have races that include flat track, road racing, supercross, and vintage races. All the races that Daytona Week offers relate directly back to the history of the motorcycle throughout the country. As mentioned earlier, Harley-Davidson became infamous for their dominating nature on the track. And just like Daytona helped Harley-Davidson become a household name, so did Harley for making Daytona the destination for racing. Although the rallies and events are fun and create a bond that is long-lasting, the causes and benefits that motorcyclists get involved in create an even deeper connection. The Patriot Guard is an organization that has the motto riding with respect. They believe in standing for those who stood for us. Their goal is to protect families of fallen soldiers from disruption, to allow them to be able to grieve without any worries. With over thousands of members, they not only attend funerals of fallen active duty members, but they also attend funerals of homeless veterans, and they greet troops returning home from the war. My grandfather is actually a member of this, and he has always said, "I'm honored to be a member, and I wish I could just do more." I believe this shows the heart of the motorcyclist. Television today does a really good job of showing bikers in a negative light, and there's nothing more positive than this organization. An example of a benefit ride would be Ride for Kids. This is a specific ride that takes place in over 37 different states across the country, and it raises money for Pediatric Brain Tumor Foundation, and it has been a benefit since 1984. It's free to riders, but they encourage them to donate, and some even fundraise months in advance for the specific cause. They not only raise money for cancer research, but they also raise money for the survivors of brain tumors. They have been able to set up college scholarships and financial aid for their families. The motorcycle would not have transcended across time strongly without the experience that it offers to the riders. As I mentioned earlier, there is a deep rumbling that the Harley-Davidson gives, and you can just feel that in the pit of your stomach. And that feeling is what gets bikers excited and helps create that experience. Have you ever been riding down the road and you see two motorcycles pass each other? When they go to pass each other, they always wave. We don't do that in our cars. It's only motorcycles. And it doesn't matter what type or brand of motorcycle they're riding, it just matters that they're not on four wheels. Within the Brotherhood, you can never meet a stranger. The conversation usually begins about the bike, but then just like any other friendship, that's the commonality that binds them together, and then it continues to grow. Just like you feel the sound of the Harley in your soul, you can still sense it in other parts of your body. There's a study that shows that riding a bike increases your focus and attention, and it also decreases cortisol levels, so that it in turn decreases stress. A 20-minute ride that can increase your adrenaline and heart rate so much that it's just like a light, moderate exercise. Finally, I will go into a personal story of myself riding a bike. I was riding with my granddad, and we were headed to Antioch to go to Bikini Beach, which is a biker bar. And what's interesting about this bar is there's not much regular car parking. There's really only bike parking. In order to get to that parking lot, you have to ride through the bar. So when we rode through it, everyone stopped what they were doing. They stopped their conversations and they stared at our bike. And I was like, "Gee, Daddy, I feel like they're judging your bike." And he just laughed and he goes, "They are." And so I felt really bad. But the next time that someone else rode through, I stopped what I was doing and I looked at their bike. It wasn't that I was judging their bike, it was that I was admiring their bike. And that's just what is just so awesome about the motorcycle company, or about the motorcycle culture, is it's not that you're judging, it's that you're admiring. And every bike is so unique, and it's unique to that one person, individual rider. Now that we have discussed the experience of riding, let's review. The Brotherhood of Motorcycles wouldn't exist without the motorcycle. So Harley-Davidson embodies the history of the motorcycle within the history of the United States, and that explains why it's lasted for over 100 years. Then the Brotherhood is made stronger through the rallies and events that the bikers can take part of. Not only can they make bonds with each other, but they can also make a difference in the lives of others. And finally, the experience of riding a motorcycle is unlike any other. I believe that this is an important topic because, like I said, Hollywood has done a really good job of making bikers look negative, but I hope you can see that they are good people. So the next time that you see a motorcycle parked, go ahead and talk to the owner of the bike. I promise you they'll be the nicest person you'll ever meet.
You went 10 minutes, is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine.